Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to talk about the penultimate story of Series 10 of Doctor Who, The Eaters of Light. Written by Rona Munro, who previously has written the final episode of the classic series of Doctor Who, with the 7th Doctor story, Survival, meaning that not only is she the first writer to return from the classic era to the revived era, she's also the only writer to work on both eras of the show, as well as having the biggest gap between writing periods. I believe it's 28 years, and if that's the case, her writing gap between her first and her second story is bigger than the entirety of classic Doctor Who. That's pretty mental. And it's directed by Charlie Palmer, who has previously directed episodes for Series 3. He directed Smith and Jones, which is one of my favourites. He directed the Shakespeare Code, and he also directed, I believe it was Daleks Take Manhattan. I could be wrong on that. And he also directed the previous Series 10 episode, Oxygen. And this is, as far as I'm recording this, the last story that he has directed for the series. And I haven't shied away that I'm a big Charlie Palmer fan in terms of his Doctor Who work. I think that he's a very strong and a very underrated director of the series. If I had to put my top 10 favourite revived era directors, it's probably up there. I've got to be honest. But yeah, anyway, this story is one of the few stories in Doctor Who history that is set in Scotland. I believe there's only 2 times when the Doctor, or at least the televised version of Doctor Who, goes to Scotland. Terror of the Zygons, of course, as well as, of course, this story, The Eaters of Light, which also ties into the concept, this is a show run by Stephen Moffat, who is a Scottish personality, as well as Peter Capaldi being one of the biggest Scottish stars ever, thanks to Doctor Who, as well as his other programs like The Thick of It and all that. He's one of the biggest Scottish actors in the thing, so it seemed like it was almost inevitable that we're going to get a story featuring Highlander like characters, Vikings. I don't know if they're what would you cast? I don't know. Celtics. I don't know what do you call them? I do apologize. This story does, I wouldn't say it tackles it, but it does involve around the missing the historical fact of the missing Ninth Legion of Rome, which a group of, I think it was 5,000 Roman soldiers went to Scotland, and they just completely disappeared, or mostly disappeared, and it's one of the biggest mysteries in history, especially around in that time during Romans' conquest and going around and basically pillaging, taking resources and foods around from other places, and then trying to adapt them into their own society, if you will. So this is a very interesting part of history, and I really do like it when Doctor Who tackles much more specific historical elements like this. But is the story any good? That's the main point. The pre-credit sequence, I do think, is odd. It's again another issue which happened with the previous story. However, this story, I really don't understand what the point of seeing the future elements of it. I do know it ties in essentially at the start and at the very end of the story. I'll spoil the ending of it. We'll see this little girl who apparently can hear sounds from this old settlement building. She can hear old Scottish music being played, and her brother comes along and is like, right, you got to come out, because if you can hear the music, it means the ghost will get you, and if the ghost gets you, it means I'm in trouble. And it's like, that kid playfulness. You do see a shot of the TARDIS engraved in one of the stones. There are these like landmark stones set around the place, and so basically teasing that there is an adventure in the past revolving around the Doctor, which leads into the story, which, you know, it does intrigue you, but the fact that, like, this element really has nothing to do with the story, and it's not a very particularly strong element of the story, I do feel it is a tad odd. But the story then really kicks in when basically the Doctor comes out of the TARDIS, and Bill and Nardole, who actually is a prominent companion here, we get to see Matt Lucas actually take a companion role. We'll get onto them in a bit. And essentially in the setup of the story, Bill promises that she is going to find the Ninth Legion of Rome somewhere in the Scottish hills. But the Doctor is like, yeah, whatever. There's a really strange moment at the start which kind of sets up what the quality, shall I say, of this story, where Bill makes this kind of like bet with the Doctor's like, I bet you behind those hills we'll see a Scottish legion. And the Doctor's like, okay, and yeah, whatever. And then for some reason, like she's like, right, I'll come back with a Scottish soldier and I'll go this way. And the Doctor and Nardole just go like the other way. They don't stay there to wait until she comes back. They don't go with her. They just kind of separate for no reason. And it does feel a tad odd, and you do kind of feel these first draft elements where characters kind of do stuff mainly because the plot needs them to. There is a kind of setup, there is a kind of thing, because like there is a whole deal, you know, like, I bet you I can find Roman soldiers. And the Doctor's obviously curious, but it does feel very odd and out of character. Now, one of the big praises about Series 10 is its portrayal of the main two cast, as well as some of the supporting roles like Nardole, Missy, and all that. However, I feel like this story, in terms of our main cast, I was a tad disappointed in them. Not that they do give any of them give any bad performances, but in terms of the Doctor, apart from some really funny moments, especially when they get captured by the Scottish earlier on in the episode, and there's a great bit where he's like, "Can you hear that? That's my patience running out. Are you going to tell me where my friend is? And what's troubling? What's to keep? How you did you destroy the Ninth Legion?" Something like that. I really do like that. And I like that bit where he drops the popcorn and the fireworks, and he kind of quickly spouts to them, was like, right, you're going to all be distracted whilst me and Noddle escape. There's some really great quirky lines here. And there's some really great moments with the 12th Doctor here. There's these great warmthness that Peter Capaldi brings to the role. There's a great scene where he's basically comforting this character who is very afraid of the outcome of a particular battle, and the Doctor is, and the way Peter Capaldi comforts this character when it's like, we're all afraid, but we've all got to also fight our own demons, our own monsters. The monster still needs to be fought, and we need to fight that fear. It's good to have fear, but we need to, and it's not going to stop us, isn't it? And the way he says it, the way he smiles, the way it's just so confident. This is a completely different version of the Doctor that we've seen in his first series, Series 8. A character who would smile and grin and give you comfort, only for then to be revealed that comfort was just a ploy. It was a chess move, shall we say, to try and get the pieces more into his favour. Whether he actually cared or not isn't actually the main concern. But here, you do generally get the feeling that the 12th Doctor in this story does care for these people, and he does befriend this individual. However, apart from these very, very, very small moments, the 12th Doctor is really underutilized here. He's mainly here for exposition. Some exposition, some really great exposition here. But his role has nothing in depth about it, which is really disappointing here, because he actually spends most of the episode with Nardole, who gets a lot of screen time than what he usually gets. In fact, it's up to Nardole essentially to break the ice, shall we say, not only bringing a lot of humour into the story, but also as well making the cast much more relatable. And in that regard, Matt Lucas does a fantastic job here. So he comes up with some really great humours. I like it when he goes, I like what you've done with the place. It's very nice trying to calm down the situation. However, like, he's a comedy character, but in this story, in this particular episode, that's all he is. He's not much of an interesting character here. And what that means is that for the majority of the story, where we do see the two of our male leads in this story, the story really drags. How is this possible? This is Rona Munro, who wrote Survival, who probably got some of the best performances from her main cast, especially Sylvester McCoy in that story, who's also I just now realised that she both wrote the two Scottish doctors that kept their accents as well, their proper Scottish accents. By the time I recorded this, I don't know if Ncuti Gatwa has appeared as Doctor Who yet. There was rumours about David Tennant, but that's beside the point. So yeah. Now before we get on to Bill, we'll get on to some of the side characters. One of the characters who really is the main vocal point for the Scottish Army storyline, because apart from really two characters, one of them is only important because it's the brother of this character, but all the rest are background characters. Not even red shirts, just background characters. With the exception, of course, like I said, this one character, Carr, played by Rebecca Benson, who actually does this great job here. She really shows this vulnerability to the character. You could see it in her face that she does have this willingness to prove herself, and she needs to prove herself in front of her people, in front of her, and she does a fantastic job here. But there's not really much to the character other than the plot line of she's scared and she needs to step up and she needs to stop taking not taking advantage of things, but we essentially learn that there's this creature in this story that killed the Ninth Legion. This creature that feeds. It's confusing. They say feed on light, but it also feeds on people. It absorbs all of their sunlight from their body. But normal, just light does nothing for it, or at least it needs light enough that it absorbs the body. But yeah, that's really strange. And essentially, we learn that when the Romans attacked Scotland, there's this little area where there's this portal that's leading into another dimension that has these creatures, and every generation they have a particular soldier to guard the vault and will soon be destined to go into it, into this other dimension and try and stop the beasts from that end of the portal. However, Carr decided that the Romans needed to be defeated, so she actually let one of these creatures out in the hopes that it will kill the Romans, and the Romans will weaken it enough so that it will be easier to kill, and then the Scottish can take over and just kill the creature itself. However, her plan failed, and the creature is basically ready to consume the planet. We'll get onto the creature in a bit, but all that detail I got about it really gets mentioned in one or two scenes about her character, and that kind of, she's kind of scared, she kind of messed up, and it's the Doctor's moral obligation to try and encourage her, and it's you made a bad decision, but you can make up for it. You're scared, but we need to tough together. We need to fight our own demons, and you can fix things. We can sort things. We can team up. But it's a kind of story that has been done in Doctor Who multiple times, and it has been done a lot better. Also, I don't know if this counts because the main threat of the monster is this third party, which is just a generic monster, the Light Eater, which, despite it being the name of the episode, really was a very disappointing aspect of the story. Really didn't help. But this story does kind of have that diplomatic storyline, which Doctor Who has tackled in before, most recently in the last episode, Emperors of Mars, where the Doctor and his team is caught between two factions. In this case, it's the Scottish and the Romans, and the Doctor has to, and the Doctor and his friends have to basically befriend each of them and try and team up. It doesn't have as many of the elements of these stories which you'd rather expect. There isn't actually a bad guy on each side, but rather these leaders who do have issues with each other, shall we say, but none of them are bad guys. And that is actually kind of refreshing. So that is really cool. So let's go back into the Roman plotline of the story. Bill befriends a Roman. She finds a Roman who basically proclaims as like, right, my entire legion was dead. They killed by this creature. We got to go out by night, and then we will find the others. I really like this element. Really, right off the bat, like, this is one of the things I said, like, this feels like a first draft, because the story kind of makes it, at least implies, that in the dark, the creature's a lot easier, kills its victims a lot more easier, at least it goes out for the prey more. In the light, it doesn't particularly appear, or at least that's what I got from the story, because you never see the creature in the daylight. However, that could be just to hide the special effects. And Bill and this Roman character she befriends, the first thing they do is wait until it's pitch black for them to go out to find the to try and get to their Roman soldiers. I guess they didn't know that they were looking for the light, but it just felt very strange rewatching this episode and going, hold on, it seems to imply this creature hunts by night and they're going by night, and it seems like the Roman soldier kind of knows about this creature. Huh? But anyway, that Roman is killed, and she befriends these other groups of Romans, the oldest of which is 18, Luticus. And he is essentially the figure. He is the main character of the Romans, because the Romans, like the Scottish in this story, they're just generalized, they're background characters mainly, with the exception of the main two leads. Luticus is played by Brian Vennell, who I'm sure has been in Doctor Who before. He looks so familiar. I cannot put an episode into the head, but he looks so familiar. I looked it up on Wikipedia. According to that, he hasn't been in Doctor Who before, apart from a audio drama with the Fourth Doctor. But of course, that's not what I'm thinking of. So I don't know where I'm getting this idea from. But with this, we get to see, from Bill's point of view, her learning a bit of Romans and a bit of their culture, and she kind of befriends Lucas. And this is where mainly the main story comes from, because Bill, she has this enthusiasm. She's like, yes, I found the Romans. She has this kind of fun glee about her that, she's fine and she's proven the Doctor wrong. But she also, like, there's a lot of things, like, this is the first time she realizes about the telepathic circuits and how different languages translate into it. She has some really fun, bombastic energy about her in the story, but she also takes the very serious moments where people start dying and people start risk lives and cower in the caves. She really takes that extremely serious, and she kind of befriends these Romans, and also encourages them to do more. These are a group of essentially Roman cowards, not the cowards as such, but they abandoned their post when the rest of the legion went to fight this creature, and they were all massacredly slaughtered, and they started hiding in these caves in the vain hopes of surviving these creatures. And there's this element where Bill can see, and because she isn't attuned to the Roman sensibilities of we should have fought, but we didn't. We were scared, and she comforts him in that. It's this idea again, like it's been in Doctor Who before, but I think it's really well handled here. We also, I think, one of the things that a lot of people bring up about this story is that it does mention the fact that Romans were a lot more sexually open than most historical periods in time, in which a character basically, Luticus basically reveals it's kind of hinted at, like, he likes Bill, and Bill is like, right, okay, I've got to say, I don't like men, I like women. And he's like, oh, so you're like this other Roman who only likes men. Yeah, it's okay, it's cool that you've limited yourself to just one gender, one sex of the human population. Like, that's perfectly fine, we can still be friends as well. It's a nice little, like, character beat. It shows a little bit more, and it's also, Bill is just like, okay, that's and it's something that's like I didn't even know, and it's something I learned through Doctor Who, that Romans were a lot more modern in terms of their perception of sex than most cultures, and we've kind of digressed through history. It's a very fascinating point of interest. It's it's nice to look that now everybody in history was completely and utterly evil, and we've only now just learned about it. Although the fact that we forgot about common courtesy like that is kind of sad. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, that's mainly like the main plot, is our characters, Bill on one side, the Doctor and Nardole on the other. Later on in the episode, they team up. Because of the TARDIS translation circuits, everybody is able to can speak to one another, and they both describe themselves as talking like babies, which is a really fun, interesting. And the Doctor and Bill and Nardole basically, well, not really Nardole, but the Doctor and Bill basically trying to get them to befriend each other, because you could either keep killing each other until you're all dead, or you could grow up, team up, and fight this even bigger threat, which is promised to basically doom not just their planet, but also the entire universe, eating not only the sun, but the stars of all the galaxy, making the threat seem a lot more bigger than probably it actually should have been in the story. Also, I've just remembered this really strange detail about this story. Essentially, in the Doctor Who universe now, crows can talk. And the only reason they don't talk now is, at least from the Doctor's point of view, at the start of the episode, they got really grouchy because humans stopped listening to them. And, like, there's a bit where one of the characters is talking to a crow and has, like, a kind of conversation with him at the end of the story. So it just kind of implies that crows were, like, also can speak. So every time you see a crow in the Doctor Who universe, in a previous episode, Bat is actually like a creature that can talk. It's really, really, really strange. And it doesn't really go anywhere apart from like this one like bit at the end, which feels very mythical inspired. Feels like something like a folk tale would come up with, like a folk tale story, which is really, really strange. Essentially, how they defeat the creature is they basically trick it into its own dimension. However, they do need to find someone to stay in and fight. The Doctor actually decides to offer himself to go into the portal and defend these creatures, as human lives are fleeting, but he lives for thousands of years. He doesn't even die, he regenerates, so he can basically go in there and protect our universe from these creatures for almost eternity if he can defend him. However, Romans and Carr, they team up and they go into the portal themselves, stopping the Doctor. I really do love this effect. Let's talk about some of the effects and stuff. There's a really weak effect. There's a really cool effect I have in the portal, especially when characters move into it, and it reminds me of like the black hole. Do you know? Have you heard of like in a black hole, when you walk towards it from other people's point of view, looking at you, you would have slowed down until you've basically frozen. The effect kind of looks like that. I believe it's sketified. It's really cool. I want to take a moment to talk about Charlie Palmer's directing in the story. This is easily his weakest job that he has ever done for the series so far, as I've stated. But it's still a really good story. A really good directed story. This episode looks very nice. There's a really great moment where the 12th Doctor discovers the portal for the first time, and it's wonderfully shot. There's certain scenes which I feel like do need to be a bit more impactful, like the scene where basically our characters team up against the Doctor to save his life so that he doesn't sacrifice himself to the other dimension. I felt like there should be more close-ups. There should have been a much more impactful. As the scene is shot, it just kind of feels like just another scene played in the adventure, which I said is like, this is Palmer's clearly his weakest story that he's directed. But there's still a lot of great moments of directing here, which doesn't mean the story's a bore to watch in terms of a directing, in terms of pointing of the camera and the framing and the characters, positioning, stuff like that. So yeah, and the story then ends off. So that's especially the story. The story ends with reuniting in the TARDIS, only to discover that Missy has been in the TARDIS this entire time and has been watching their adventure on the screen. And essentially, she's been learning through these human characters, through our characters, like what it means to be good. There's a great moment where the Doctor holds Missy's hand and is like, "I hope that you're good. However, there is a chance that it's so easy to be tricked by it." So he still doesn't trust her yet. I do feel like we should have had the Missy scenes in another story, because here it just kind of feels like a post credit, like, oh, teasing for the next episode, and you kind of forget what the actual episode that you watched is about. But yeah, and then we cut back to that little girl at the start of the episode, tying in that narrative flow. And that is the Eaters of Light. Overall, this story has a lot of good things going for it. It has Bill, it has Luticus, it has Carr. Oh, I forgot to mention the whole thing with the crow. Her brother is like, her name was Carr, you will remember her, and then that's where the crows get their craw craw noise. They're not grouchy, they were remembering. Every crow on planet Earth is remembering this one woman from like the Roman times who sacrificed herself in an interdimensional portal and didn't care about like any other deaths before or after that. It seems really strange, I know. Yeah, it's just really, the whole crow thing was just a really strange detail in this story. I honestly don't know where the whole crow thing comes from. It's just baffling. But anyway, Eaters of Light. There are some good moments. The great stuff with Bill. There are some great moments with the Doctor and Nardole. Luticus, like I said, is a great character. Carr, at least Rebecca Benson's performance of Carr is very great. However, a lot of the story doesn't work. The script feels like a first draft in many places, with characters either making stupid decisions or decisions where it doesn't really add up, shall we say, or just doesn't feel like narratively flowed. And so, overall, the story does kind of fail in that regard. So anyway, that's Eaters of Light. So join me next time where we will conclude Series 10, as the Doctor will be facing some very old foes, and Bill basically befriends an individual who might be a bit more important than he actually is. So join me next time for World Enough in Time, The Doctor Falls, and we might even tackle the short, The Best of Days, which was a lockdown short for it. So hopefully we'll get onto that. So join me next time for them. So I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.